If you wanna be solicitors, why don't you come and visit us at SQE TV?
This is SQE TV, the YouTube channel for wannabe solicitors with me, Jonny Hurst. In this video, we're going to be focusing on the basics of qualifying work experience.
SQE TV.
So, what is qualifying work experience? Well, in a nutshell, it is the period of on-the-job experience that you need to complete in order to qualify as a solicitor, alongside the SQE examinations, passes in SQE1 and SQE2. So the work experience piece for a minimum of 2 years, and you can accrue it in up to 4 employers. Now, some people ask, well, there are all sorts of things that I've done in the past, stuff I might have the opportunity to do in the future. What will count? Well, we're going to cover that in this video. Now, one of the first things to emphasize is that the type of work experience it covers does not include simulated or online virtual type of work experience. They have to be real life experiences with real life clients and so on.
SQE TV.
Now, there's a bit of confusion in student circles as to the difference between a training contract under the LPC and qualifying work experience under the new SQE regime. So let's talk about briefly the training contract under the LPC regime first of all. So what did a traditional training contract look like? Well, typically it would be 2 years served at a single law firm or legal employer, although you might be seconded to a client for, say, a 6-month period, but you would rotate between departments. And somebody in my position, I'll tell you what I did. I did 4 6-month seats. I started off in real estate, then I went to do litigation, then did corporate, and then private client. And that gave me experience of a whole variety of practice areas. And the rules were that you had to do at least one contentious or litigation seat. And that was my one when I did time doing commercial litigation during my 6-month stint in the litigation department. Now, it's very different for the SQE under the QWE regime. So what happens for QWE is that you could spend your 2 years in up to 4 employers and aggregate that time so that you can get experience in various different settings. Now, one thing is really quite interesting about qualifying work experience in that a lot of law firms are still calling their qualifying work experience training contracts, because that's what people know and understand. And essentially, it is a contract during which you will be trained. And very often, the training contract, new style under the qualifying work experience, looks just like the old style training contract for that firm. But, and the critical thing is, firms now have much more flexibility to employ you in as few or as many departments as they wish over that 2-year period. Indeed, there are some firms that are actually just placing you in a department, and the deal is basically you work your way through that department in the entire 2-year period. In other words, you don't move. So you get very restricted experience in one sense by just having exposure to one particular speciality. But if it's one that you want and want to make a career in, that's fabulous, because by the time you qualify 2 years later, you're somebody who essentially has 2 years worth of experience in practice in that specialist department. And as long as you are working towards the competencies that the SRA require you to be working towards and having that opportunity of developing those competencies during your qualifying work experience, you will accrue it and then qualify at the end of that 2-year period.
SQE TV.
So where can I get my qualifying work experience? Well, the beauty of the new system is that you can accrue your 2 years qualifying work experience in anything from up to 1 to 4 employers. We've said that already, but the employers could be a range of combination of law firms, in-house legal departments, pro bono centres, legal advice centres, central government legal departments, maybe local government legal departments. The world really is your oyster, and it can be in an international setting. It doesn't have to be in England and Wales, and the law that you get experience in doesn't have to be English law either. So there's a real flexibility there in terms of where you get your qualifying work experience under the new regime. One of the questions I'm asked frequently is, well, what counts as qualifying work experience? Will this count or will that count? Now, in an introductory video like this, I'm not going to be able to do justice to all the different types of roles that are out there and different tasks you might do and say, yes, this counts or no, this doesn't count. But what I can do is to leave you with some principles. Now, the key test that the SRA set is that you have to be given the opportunity to develop at least 2 of the solicitor competencies set out on their website. And these are fairly generic type of stuff. But ultimately, if the sort of work you're doing is delivering legal services like that of a trainee or a qualified solicitor, then the chances are you are going to be doing qualifying work experience and it will count. However, if you're doing non-legal work or repetitive work that's very narrow, that is less likely to count. But what's important is that it's not the job title. So you could, given the job title trainee, if you're not doing work that gives you the opportunity to develop the competencies, despite the job title trainee, that won't count. But similarly, if you're given a legal secretary job title, but what you're doing is typically fee earner work most of the time, then that is likely to be able to count as qualifying work experience. So don't focus on the label, focus on the tasks that you actually do. And finally, two subjects we need to cover very briefly on this introductory video to qualifying work experience. And that is record keeping of your QWE and how to get it signed off. So first of all, record keeping. There's a really useful template on the SRA's website of how to keep a record of your qualifying work experience. And what you should be doing is downloading that and completing it as you go along. Obviously, there are paralegals who will want to fill that in retrospectively for work they've done in the past. That's fine, obviously harder to do, but try and get yourself into the practice and habit of completing your records as you go along. Now, what's important for you to do is to make sure you demonstrate that you have been given the opportunity to develop those solicitor competencies that we mentioned earlier. So try and map the work you do to those solicitor competencies, because you'll need to show you've been given the opportunity to develop at least two of these. And then you need your record signing off. And obviously, if you've been working at more than one employer, you'll need it separately signed off at each employer, each time by a solicitor who's qualified in England and Wales. And then you submit your application to be admitted as a solicitor, and you would attach to it your template duly completed with all your qualifying work experience details, having had it signed off by the relevant solicitors.
SQE TV.
So that's the end of this introduction to qualifying work experience. I hope you found it useful. There'll be lots more information in later videos, so look out for those. If you like this one, please do like and subscribe. We really appreciate it when you do. It just remains for me to do one thing now, and it's to say over to the jingle.
If you wanna be solicitors,